Welcome everybody to VVR. Today we're going to be talking about Cobra Kai Season 1. Now, if you guys haven't seen Cobra Kai yet, I think now is probably the best time because Season 3 just came out, which is currently on Netflix, and I'm currently on Season 1. I'm getting around to Season 2 right now. I'm actually on the second episode of Season 2. And there's there's quite a few things in this season. It's just Season 1 that I think are quite interesting in terms of perspective and how it plays on character dynamics and a huge misunderstanding of the characters. I'm not going to get too much into spoilers in this first half of this video. I will be talking about spoilers at the end of this video and kind of wrap up my thoughts of how the season ends and talk about the ending, I guess. But for now, perspective. We start with, obviously, if you don't know the story of the Karate Kid, in the first movie, Daniel actually beats Johnny at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert, I guess. And Johnny is kind of set up to be in the movie the villain, since he harasses Daniel, and then he also beats him up like on numerous amounts of times. And you actually get to see the flashbacks in the show, which is kind of nice. In case you haven't seen Karate Kid or it's been a while, you get to kind of get reintroduced into that story, which you do a beautiful job at, setting up these parallels between things that happened in the past versus things that are still going on now. But they don't start to happen until Johnny opens up his karate dojo, which is named Cobra Kai. I like in the first episode, I'm not sure if this is a huge spoiler or not, but in the first episode, we get introduced to Johnny, who is just down out of his luck. Like, this guy, he just does not have anything good in his life. Like, he lives in a crappy apartment. He has a son, and I guess he had a wife or a girlfriend that live in totally different cities, I guess, and his son absolutely hates him. Obviously, the mom doesn't talk good about Johnny either, so just anyone that Johnny knows is just not on good terms with him. And obviously, Johnny is just like, I just want to be left alone, which I can totally relate to. Like, when you've been beaten down in life, or just when life doesn't go that well, I totally understand that. On the other hand, we get to see Daniel, who is incredibly successful. He has his own car dealership, which he runs. I think it's called LaRusso Auto or something like that. He hasn't really done much karate ever since his wins, 30 years ago or whenever, however long it's been. He actually is more focused on a business front that he runs with his wife. It's kind of interesting that you get to see his success from this point, and you don't get to see the hindrance that, like, when he starts to lose his balance in life, I guess. You don't get to see that until later on in the show. I would say, like, even halfway. And that's when I'm going to start talking into spoilers, like episode 8. Later on in this video, I'm going to be talking about the spoilers of, like, what the show does that I think is really interesting. I'm not sure if it's pulled off the best way because of one character, which I'll get into, but there is something that happens in episode 8 where everything gets turned on its head. And now, if you haven't seen Cobra Kai, definitely, I recommend it. That bottom line, it's like, I recommend the show. But before we get into that, to that spoiler, let's talk about establishing characters. So not only is the season made to bring up a new generation onto Cobra Kai, we've seen this numerous amount of times, such as films like in Star Wars, or in the latest, what's it called? The Shark Boy and Lava Girl new movie that came out on Netflix as well. There's like a bunch of crap that, like, people just do that where they reintroduce a new generation. But I think this show does it the best way of introducing the show, a new generation to the Karate Kid. Anyway, so we have Johnny. In episode 1, he's out in the parking lot in front of this liquor store, and we see that Miguel, one of the current residents that just moved into the apartment that he lives in, coincidentally, is getting harassed inside the store and is brought out, and Johnny's car, which he favors very well, I think it's a Thunderbird, it's like a very famous, like, 80s, 90s car or whatever, it's just out there in the parking lot. And these kids that are around Miguel's age, Miguel is like this, I think they're in high school, they start harassing him. And I love this reaction because Johnny is just listening to the whole thing, obviously because they're screaming in the parking lot, but he doesn't react until he thinks that his car gets hit by a bottle of something or whatever, or one of the good kids, like, does something to his car. And that's when he decides to act. And when he does, this is when the show gets awesome for me. It's the fight scenes, it's the music, it's everything that led up to that point where Johnny just had enough. And you really get to see that throughout the series. It's almost like a Spider-Man 2 trope as well, the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, where everything is just beating this guy into the ground. Like, you get to see Daniel's billboard like all around town. You get to hear talk about how great Daniel is, and how, like, in front of Johnny, like, people just tell him like, oh, Daniel's awesome, and like in front of Johnny, like the guy that was defeated by Daniel. I think that's a terrible thing to happen. It's been like 30 years, but to like mentally recover from that is extremely difficult. It gets to the point where kids are beating up Miguel, and then he just has it. Like, when he thinks that someone threw something at his car or whatever, that's when he decides to act. And obviously, it's been 30 years. I guess it's been a while, but like the first kick he throws, you get to see like he's in agonizing pain just from throwing one kick. But in this little fight, you really get to establish what this whole series is about. I would say, if you're not interested in the Karate Kid, I would just say just watch the first episode, and that pretty much sets up everything until episode 8. Episode 8, I guess, is the turning point, or I see it as the turning point of the show. Getting into that, we get to see Miguel's, transformation as like the shy, bullied kid. He's new to the neighborhood. We think that he is the embodiment of Daniel, right? Since Johnny takes after Miguel pleads, like, please train me, like, I want to learn how to defend myself. We get to think that Miguel is going to be the new Daniel. However, I'm not sure if it's like episode 3 or 4, but Robbie comes in. Robbie is Johnny's son, and obviously Robbie just hates his dad because he's never been there for him. He left when he was like, I think when he was born, he just left. So obviously, Robbie just has so much hate for Johnny. But when we get introduced to Robbie, we feel like this kid is just gonna kill someone. Like, he has so much anger and aggression, and it's totally validated. But like, where the show takes him is, I almost like Miguel's storyline rather than Robbie's, because you get to totally understand that what Miguel went through in high school. I don't even know if Robbie goes to high school or not. We just know that he's just living in this terrible apartment with his mom, and his mom is like never around, and he just has this terrible life. And so I understand his anger, but I more understand Miguel's storyline, if that makes sense. So Miguel's, just going on to Miguel and Robbie, since these two become like the main two kids, I guess, that end up having a rivalry towards the end of the series. And you get to see that Miguel quickly learns from Johnny how to defend himself. And ever since there's an incident in school where the kids that were beating up Miguel are trying to beat up Daniel LaRusso's daughter in school, and obviously Miguel stands up for her and he kicks everyone's ass. And that's probably my favorite fight scene out of the whole thing, is that lunchroom fight scene. I think that's probably the best one. And then following that would be Johnny's fight in the parking lot, and then the end fight, which is pretty sweet. But overall, Miguel's transformation up to episode 8, you completely understand. Now, Robbie's, I don't understand what they were trying to do with this character, because they make him out to be such an antagonizing like villain to Johnny, because Johnny's just trying to get his life back together and he's trying to reconnect with everyone. But they really make Robbie this antagonizing force that Johnny can never be with his son. That's where things just start happening, where Robbie goes to apply for a job at LaRusso Autos under Daniel LaRusso, so he can, I guess, spite his father by working with Daniel LaRusso, Johnny's enemy, I guess. And then when his father finds out, like, he's gonna, flip a bone. I don't understand, other than like the amount that they have to force it onto Daniel, but I just didn't understand what they were trying to do with Robbie's character. I get it, it's like you want to parallel and make conflict and establish conflict throughout the series, but I think Robbie didn't have to be there for that, at least for the first season. I don't think Robbie had to be there. Like I said, there's a lot of misunderstandings that happen in this episode, or throughout the series, I would say, where as Johnny, we get to see that Daniel is more of a villain to Johnny, and then as Daniel, you get to see that throughout a lot of misunderstandings, that Johnny is like a villain too. Like, he's never stopped being a villain. He's always been the same person, which I think is quite interesting. I'm going to talk about the spoiler here around it. So we're going to move on to episode 8. I'm going to start talking about spoilers. So if you don't want to know anything about spoilers, you could stop watching this. Just let me know what you think in the comments below. And watch Cobra Kai. Let me know what you think. I really hope you like it. Like I said, there's just some things that just didn't... I love the show. There's just some things that were questionable. Not things that I didn't like, but just were questionable for me. And this is where I'm going to talk about that stuff. So overall, the show ends off on a pretty good note. I really like where they took the characters and where they're going to go in the second season. But like I said, I was more interested in what was happening in the first half of the season. Once you get to episode 8, where Miguel, who's training under Johnny, and you have Sam, who is Daniel's daughter, they start to date. And they naturally get off extremely well. Ever since Miguel saves Sam from the douchebags at school, you think that they're going to develop this friendship and everything's going to go well. And on their first date, it feels really well done. Like, it feels perfect. Like, these guys are supposed to have a future together. I think it only lasts for a while. I don't know how long in the show, like how much time goes past, but Robbie gets to be more closer to Daniel, I guess, because he goes and drops off this envelope at Daniel's house. And then obviously Daniel's looking for a partner because he wants to introduce more balance in his life. So Daniel starts to find karate again, and there's a lot of stuff that Daniel goes through. I think Johnny has been through a lot more than Daniel, but they both have their own share of problems, where Daniel is trying to find peace and balance between his life and his businesses as well. When he opens his karate dojo, or I guess like the little dojo in his house, he finds himself again. And I think that's a really important lesson, that like when life gets you down or when things aren't just going well, I think it's important to find the things that brought you to who you are and go from there. Like, find the things that made you happy. Like when he's teaching Robbie about balance, I think is one of the best lessons in the whole show, which again, my whole question is, why is Robbie getting the treatment from Daniel? Like, Robbie's just this kid, you know what I mean? Like, it just felt like the show was just forcing Robbie so much into this second half, where it's just like, Robbie in the first part, I would have liked it if Robbie came in later so that we can establish his character of like, there's no helping out this kid. He's kind of like the Kylo Ren of the series. At least it felt like it. Like, there's no helping this kid. But yet somehow Daniel's like the only person he warms up to. I guess because like he's the only person he's seen as a father figure. Maybe, but I don't know. It's just the way it was portrayed. I think it could have been just a little bit better, or hold off Robbie until the second season. Anyway, the scene about balance. Whatever's going on in your life, you got to find the good stuff. Like, when you're at the bad stuff, like when you're down here, if you find the good stuff, and you start to pull it down to match the bad stuff, and that's the balance of life. That's the overall lesson. And I just think that's just a really powerful thing to teach kids. Just an amazing lesson. But I just don't know why Robbie had to be the one to learn that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I saw it. Anyway, we get to pick up with the tournament, where actually before the tournament, there is this little beach party that happens that Cobra Kai is throwing, and Sam, Miguel's girlfriend at the time, is grounded, I guess, and Miguel's texting her all day. And like I said, I totally understand Miguel's story and motivations more than Robbie's. It's way more fleshed out. So he's trying to get in contact with Sam and trying to tell her, hey, why don't you come to this party? It's going to be really fun. I miss you, all that stuff. And obviously there's a little dynamic there with Miguel and Sam, because Sam has never invited Miguel over to her house, which she has done with her previous boyfriend, who's just a douchebag. And why not Miguel? Like, Miguel should have definitely been invited, but the only reason he wasn't is because Daniel knows that if Miguel's training under Johnny, he would definitely not allow his daughter to date, which is, I believe, is highly skewed, because it definitely wouldn't have mattered. If you see how happy his daughter is, I think it wouldn't have mattered. Later into the series, they get to talk about, like, you're just being ridiculous. Like, you're letting this 30-year-old rivalry, like, come back and bite you, like it's affecting our family, Daniel's family, So anyway, Miguel is trying to text Sam to come to the party, but she doesn't. She doesn't have her phone on her because her mom has it. Teenage drama. So Miguel's thinking that, she's probably spending time with that other guy, with Robbie, since he went to Daniel's house and he saw Robbie there. And he's questioning, obviously, what we would question, like, why isn't Miguel there? Why can't he be there? Why can't I be there, or whatever? I think it's really interesting that like I said, you get to understand Miguel's story more than Robbie's. Anyway, Sam shows up to the party with Robbie, obviously, because I don't know why, it just felt so forced, but it brings up to the point where Miguel has been drinking a little bit. Obviously, I don't know why this show is showing kids drink, but whatever. Where he goes up to confront Sam and accidentally, I guess not accidentally, he like intentionally picks a fight with Robbie, because like he's like, what are you doing with my girl? And he throws a punch and he accidentally hits Sam. And because of that, obviously Miguel's way out of control. But I think just by doing that is establishing, wow, you, like, Cobra Kai Johnny's methods of teaching, or just even his past teachings, have led to such destructive behavior. And I think you get to see that most in Hawk. Hawk is this kid that has a bizarre lip scarring, and he's super shy, super timid. I guess he's on the spectrum or whatever. That when Johnny, in the beginning of the season, Johnny's like really pushing him and really calling him names and just like pushing him beyond his limits, he just can't take it anymore. So that the next day, when he comes back to the dojo, he has a mohawk, and that's why he's called Hawk, and he's got a hawk tattoo on his back, which for like a 16 or 17-year-old, I think it's just ridiculous. Like, his 180 is so out of nowhere. Like, I get it, but like, wow. Ridiculous what they do with that kid. But like I said, I think he's the best embodiment of like how extreme someone can take Cobra Kai's or Johnny's instructions and really twist that around, where he starts to become like an antagonist, like slowly starting to become an antagonist for the group, which I can see that happening in later seasons, which I believe that that does happen. In the thumbnail, I think I saw it. Anyway, you get to see the tournament now. Since Johnny filled out the application to go in the tournament, when you get to the tournament, everything is now turned on its head. Miguel is more looked at as the villain, since he has so much hostility towards beating Robbie, or just wanting to beat Robbie, since Robbie also joined the tournament under an unknown alias. He's just in it as himself. But he's trying to make amends with Sam, but just nothing he's saying connects with her. He can't like, no matter how much he tries to apologize, nothing works, which isn't too surprising because he did hit her in the face. But I really do like that you really get to see the transformation in Miguel from being this really shy, timid kid to being this very violent, extreme teenager, almost similar to Hawk. In the tournament, you get to see just Hawk just like taking down dudes with his elbow, and Miguel is like, his aggression or just his attitude just completely changes, which I think is done really well, like I said. So since Robbie's in the fight, I think Hawk, or I forget who, somebody damages Robbie's shoulder. And there's a couple callbacks that happen in the season to the first movie. Like, Daniel tries to perform this medical thing that Mr. Miyagi did, where like he rubbed his hands together and, you know, it's gonna like heal his wound, I guess, or just allow him to continue. There's, like I said, there's a lot of parallels that happen in the show that definitely mirror the events that happened in Karate Kid, which I think is interesting. I think it's done a lot better in Cobra Kai than in Star Wars, if you know what I'm talking about. Like, or in The Force Awakens, they have a lot of beat for beat things that happen in that versus, the original trilogy. So anyway, I get to the point where Daniel and Robbie fight. Now, since Robbie didn't have anyone as his as his sensei, Daniel steps up and agrees to be a sensei, which is kind of interesting because when Robbie comes clean to Daniel for the tournament, he comes clean to him saying, "Hey, I was only warming, getting closer to you so that I can hurt my dad," which is like, whoa, this is very extreme for a teenager, I think. And it's, like I said, it just pushes the boundary of, I don't think a kid would do that. Like, he was fine 30 years without his dad. Like, why does he have to suddenly be in his dad's life? You know, just to hurt him. It just doesn't make too much sense to me. Maybe you guys saw it differently, but I just took it as that. Anyway, this later half, when Daniel's teaching Robbie about karate, that felt more of the spiritual kind of aspect, and it's weird because we get to see Daniel as the villain in the beginning of the season, but like, when Daniel finally picks up karate, he gets to embody the teaching, or he tries to embody the teachings of Mr. Miyagi. And I guess that's where you see the heart of the show. Like, that's where you see the spiritualness of the show, where it just feels more metaphysical. And it felt right. Just Daniel teaching again. I think that's really cool. Whereas Johnny, that's more of the just fight for your life, like trying to get your life back. You know, that's more of like the, yeah, man, just get it out there, you know? That's what I see for those two characters. Anyway, like I said, at the end of this tournament, like, it's Miguel versus Robbie, and Miguel is just like wanting to obviously destroy Robbie because he thinks that Robbie's trying to make a move on Sam. So what he does is that he doesn't break Robbie's shoulder, but like he targets that, and Robbie's does some really cool things where like you think that Robbie's gonna win because now it's flipped on its head, where Robbie's now pointed as the underdog, as the hero. Like out of nowhere, I would have liked to have seen more development of Robbie, learn more about why he's doing these things, even though like his plan is completely flawed, and why he feels so much more connected to Daniel than his father. I would have liked to seen that just a little bit more, because out of nowhere, like I said, Robbie just joins the freaking tournament. Why? after he confessed to Daniel that he that he was only in it to hurt his father, like Daniel's like, get out of my dojo. I don't want you here anymore. So then when Robbie just out of nowhere joins the tournament, I don't know what he's in it to do other than to beat Cobra Kai, which, why are you going so far just to hurt your dad? Like, I get it, he hurt you as a kid, but like, he's nothing to you. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't click. I'm not saying that it's a bad like plot. Why is Robbie being painted as the hero, the underdog out of nowhere? Like, Miguel was set up to do that, but now this show is just it flipped it on its head. Like I said, I liked what they did with Miguel, but for Robbie, like out of nowhere, just learning the correct way of life and learning how to do this one famous kick that Daniel can't even do, the two-legged kick or whatever. It made it seem like now Robbie is supposed to be the underdog, which, like I said, is interesting. It's such an interesting concept, and I wish they could have fleshed that out just a little bit better, but they didn't. Anyway, Robbie ends up losing the tournament, and you really get to see like Miguel. He's come a long way, and he definitely didn't learn the right lessons from Johnny, because Johnny didn't teach the right lessons. He just told him, "There's no mercy. You never, you always strike first, and you never quit." You know. So, since Miguel is such a youthful kid, is just new to karate, he takes on that mantra. Like I said, it just makes so much more sense. At the end of the series, I guess Daniel takes on Robbie as his apprentice, and they start the Miyagi dojo or something like that, which is really cool because getting back to the roots of the Karate Kid, and just like, I guess, taking a troubled kid. I think that's what they're trying to do with Robbie, is take a troubled kid and just get him to take back his life. Whereas in Cobra Kai, the things with Johnny and Miguel at the beginning were just like, this is what we needed. You know, like, we need some guy that's like down out of his luck and just wants, he wants to fight and push back, but there's so much pushback on Johnny with everything. Like, no matter how hard you try, something's always just going to push you back and like put you to ground level. But I really love Johnny's story a lot more than Daniel's, honestly. It really does a good job of showing perspective between two different characters, and two different perspectives between the older and newer generation as well. Anyway, overall, I like where the show's headed. Once you buy into Robbie's, of Daniel taking in Robbie and Robbie learning more about karate, I don't know, you start to understand now where it's going. We're going to redeem Robbie and make Miguel out to be a villain, from what I know, from what this season establishes. And you end off with Johnny in the dojo at night, and his old master, the one that just made his life terrible, his old sensei, comes in. And in the series they said he was dead, but I guess it's not true, since he comes in through the door. And at first I was like, oh, maybe Johnny's really drunk and now he's like fighting a ghost or whatever. But no, that's actually him. That's actually his old sensei that comes back, and I guess it gets explained in the second season why he's back. But overall, I'm excited to see where it goes, because there's a lot of good things in this show. There's a lot of interesting elements in this show that are done. Some are done really well, others are just questionable. I don't hate them, but they're just questionable things. Overall, I really enjoyed the show. I would say it's like an 8 out of 10. You know, if I were to give it a rating, 8 being like, yeah, watch it. Let me know what you think. Enjoy it. It's not a masterpiece. It has its flaws, but like the fight scenes, it's got an 80s soundtrack that's backing it. It's just, well, what else could you want? It's pretty good. But yeah, let me know what you thought. And sorry if this went on for a little bit too long, but there's so many things that I could still talk about in this first season. But I think I'll catch up with you guys on the second season of Cobra Kai. Ugh, I can't even talk anymore. I'm so hungry. I need to eat food. Get some Ritz and crackers. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.